Good morning from Panhandle Outdoors, America's only daily outdoor TV show. Your source for fishing, hunting, and information for folks who enjoy the great outdoors. Now sit back, relax. It's Panhandle Outdoors.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Panhandle Outdoors on this Tuesday morning. I'm not Winston Chester, but we're still glad you're here. Winston is traveling, I think, home from a conference, and I think he'll be with us tomorrow. But as a member of the Panhandle Outdoors Pro Staff team, I say that word lightly, I'm going to be your host today. It's my first time hosting solo, so bear with me and we'll try to get through it together. First thing we have to do is get to the weather. And on Tuesday morning, weather today, believe it or not, after yesterday's rain, the temperatures are going to fall. We're looking at a low tonight of 49 with a high of 75. All that rain yesterday hopefully helped knock a lot of this dust down. Those of you who planted food plots were probably praying for this rain, and we're grateful to get it. So we finally got some rain. The weather is brought to us by Haney Technical Center at the corner of Highway 77 and Baldwin Road. The river readings today, Apalachicola at Bluntstown is 3.5 feet. I believe that should be rising after yesterday's rain, as well as the Choctawhatchee, which is at 7 feet. And I'm sure it's going to be rising a lot because it looked like a lot of that rain was over that way. Our tides today are brought to us by Kent Forest Lawn Home, Funeral Home and Cemeteries. The low tide at 10:20 and a high today of 11:58. Marine forecast looks like it's going to be rough. Looking like 2 to 4, building from 4 to 6. Small craft advisories will be out. Winds are supposed to be blowing from 15 to 20 knots. So it's probably a good day to work on your boats and your tackle and not try to venture offshore. We're going to be back with our first segment in a few minutes, so stay tuned. Welcome back. I want to talk a little bit about the National Wild Turkey Federation. As most of you know who've seen me on the show before with Winston. And by the way, I'm Ken Paramore. I forgot to mention my name at the first segment. So after I retired, I got involved with the National Wild Turkey Federation as a volunteer, and I want to talk a little bit about our banquet we had in August. I know Stan touched on it a little bit a month or two ago, but we had our third annual banquet August, I think it was the 11th. We had about 150 new memberships signed up. We had over 220 people attended. We had great barbecue provided by the United Methodist Church downtown. We had a record number of sponsors, local sponsors, that help support our community, obviously, and I encourage all of you to use local sponsors when you can. We had about 16 of them, and they either sold tables or they bought tables. We had a great turnout. We talked about our youth challenge that we had last spring. We're going to try to do that again this year. We're trying to get our youth involved in hunting more. As you know, our youth are more involved in their electronic devices pretty much than they are the outdoors, and it's showing across the country, not only in numbers of hunters or outdoor participants, but the sport of hunting is declining, and there's a big push and effort to get our youth back involved and engaged in outdoors. We're going to have a youth challenge again this year. I'll probably try to announce it some more around February after we get past our hunting season. But we had a great banquet. We have, like I said, more than 150 new members. Last year we signed up about 100. So the more members that we get, obviously they know somebody, they attend the banquet, they come and join us, and they have a good time. So it just kind of, it's really been a good thing. Also in the last year, I became a member and got voted in as a board member, excuse me, on the state chapter board of directors actually. And they meet 4 times a year, and they decide a lot of things about local and state chapters, but they decide where to distribute the funds that are raised at the banquets. And once a year we get together. It's called a super fund, and the FWC and the Forest Service provides us a list of areas. They're always public lands that are in need of restoration or maintenance or clearing to improve wildlife habitat. So this year we appropriated $80,000 that will be matched by FWC, the Florida Forest Service, and Duke Energy. And those funds are distributed on wildlife management areas throughout the state. And up here, a couple examples of those. There's the Choctawhatchee River Management Area. We had Apalachicola, Tate's Hell, Point Washington, and they'll either be wildlife clearings, they do burning, they do chopping. As you know, wild turkeys like open areas, they don't like thick. So we're going to distribute from just the Florida State Chapter $80,000 this year to projects throughout the state on public lands. So it's a really good way to see that your donations and your memberships and your banquet, when you go bid on items and bid on things at the banquet, where your money goes. And I had no idea until I became a board member and was actually a part of distributing and seeing where that money's going to go. And another charge to the board is to make sure those funds are distributed throughout the state. So one portion of the state with their management areas doesn't get more attention or projects than other parts, because there's a big debate, and members of FWC are there to, and the biologists are there to show where their needs are, and then the board decides where they're going to go and come up with a final dollar. So it's really an interesting process, but the biggest part of it is you can see where your monies go by getting more involved in, and all these organizations do the same thing, you know, pretty much. Ducks Unlimited, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, everybody that gets these, you know, they put their monies back into conservation, which is where it belongs, because as you know, we fund, sportsmen and conservationists fund their sport, unlike any other sport in the country. I encourage you all to get involved with the outdoors. As I said before, we have a decline in hunting, and we don't want to lose this heritage and this ability, because there's more push nowadays to get rid of hunting altogether, as everybody knows. So anyway, enough about the National Wild Turkey Federation. I'll come back in a minute. We'll talk about some hunting season, and I've got some game cameras, and I'll talk about game cameras a little bit, and then I've got one more piece at the end, if we have time, I want to talk about. Welcome back. Let's talk about hunting season in a few minutes. As most of you know that hunt, our archery season opened last Saturday. I hope everybody did well. Our archery season opened. Our hunting season officially is open now in the Zone D, which is in the Panhandle. I got a chance to go, but I got invited to go to Georgia. Georgia's gun season opened the Saturday the 21st, and so I went to Georgia, and as y'all know, it was too hot to hunt. It was in the 80s in the middle of the day. It was dry, dusty. I did see some deer, but I hope everybody down here did well with their slinging their arrows and their crossbows. Crossbows, as you know, are legal as well during archery season. So we're officially underway with our hunting. And another aspect of our antlerless deer season is archery season. You can take a deer of either sex, which is a bonus for those who are in need for some deer meat. And a big part of our hunting season is hunter safety. And when I went to Georgia, I learned something that was a little different than hunting here in Florida, is that Georgia requires hunter arms on private lands. So before I left, I obviously went through the regs, but I had to figure out that I needed an orange vest. And when you walk around on Georgia land, even if it's private, which is different than Florida, because in Florida we only need to wear it on wildlife management areas. And a lot of people do either way, and it is part of being a safe hunter is to that orange, that blaze orange is really the way to go, particularly if you're in a place that you have a lot of people on the move and moving around. But anyway, I had to wear orange in Georgia, as opposed to when I hunt in private land in Florida. A lot of times I don't, because I'm mostly sitting in a tree stand. But that was a difference, big difference that I learned in going to Georgia, other than buying the non-resident hunting license, was you have to wear orange on private lands. Tree stand safety. I know all y'all been in the woods and been checking out your tree stands, but I checked out mine. I find out that, you know, you have ladder stands that the ratchet straps that hold them against the tree, you know, I found some that were borderline on the verge of not rotten, but you don't want to climb a tree and feel like, you know, the tree stand's not going to stay against the tree. You know, nuts and bolts that rust, especially on the metal ones. Wooden stands are a thing of the past, but they're still used. But between the wood rot and, you know, it rots around the screws and the rungs on the ladders, if it's a ladder type stand, you know, most people have gotten away from wooden tree stands, but tree stand falls are the leading cause of injuries while hunting. It's not being shot by people. It's tree stand falls are number one in hunting related incidents or accidents. And most all of you probably know somebody who's had an unfortunate fall out of a tree stand and gotten hurt pretty bad. I know I do, and I've known people who've broken their back, you know, crushed their vertebrae, laid there until their hunting parties realize that they didn't come back, especially if it's in the afternoon, you know, and they go looking for them. And so tree stand safety, wear that harness. Even they have harnesses now, you know, that go up and down when you climb instead of just putting it on when you get up there. They have harnesses that you can attach to yourself and the stand or the tree and use that harness as you go up, because especially at, well, anybody's age, but the older I know I get, the more I'm not as flexible maybe as I used to be, and you're going to hit hard even at 8 feet up or 10 foot. And if you land on your back, your neck, or you're going to break. Something's going to break, and it's going to hurt. So tree stand safety is really important. Firearm safety, obviously, it stands to reason that you need to identify your target. Wear that hunter orange if you're out, you know, walking around. Keep your muzzle pointed in a safe direction. And that's what I always, you know, there's 10 commandments of hunter safety, 10 rules. But I always, when I was at hunter ed classes and helped teach them in the past, the number one rule for me is that muzzle direction. Irregardless of how that gun, if that gun ends up going off accidentally, whether the safety's off, whether a limb hits the trigger, any other example of a gun, if it goes off and that muzzle's in a safe direction, it's not going to hurt anybody for the most part. So I always taught first and foremost, even though it's one of the commandments, is that muzzle direction, muzzle control, whether it be up, down, you know, away. At least, you don't want it going off accidentally, but at least if it goes off, it's not going to hurt somebody next to you, walking with you across the field. Muzzle direction to me is the most important, and that's just always been one of my things. And over my career, I have investigated and been involved in numerous hunting incidents throughout the state, and they're very unfortunate. They will really change the way you feel and think about the hunting in the future, and how you hunt and how your family hunts. I know one example for me was right here one Thanksgiving Day, or day after Thanksgiving, several years back, and one young man mistook another young man for a deer, and the result was tragic. And I went home and hugged my kids after that when I got home. But you don't want that to happen, is what I'm trying to say. And you just have to exercise. I had another incident, even if you're not hunting. I had an incident one time at a shooting range, and it was a skeet shooting range. And the hunter shot his skeet, and when he got done, he put the muzzle of the gun on his toe, on top of his shoe. And it went off. It was a shotgun. It was a 20 gauge shotgun, and it went off point blank on the top of his foot. Well, needless to say, you can imagine what that one was like. So, muzzle direction. Again, if that gun had gone off and that muzzle was pointed at the ground, yeah, it would have scared the tar out of them, but nobody may have gotten hurt. And he almost lost his foot because of that. So firearm safety, tree stand safety is probably the two most things to be aware of when you're out in the field. It's just paramount because everybody wants to, their loved ones to come home from a fun. You don't want to ruin your fun trip. So just be safe out there. Enjoy the hunting season. We're going to take a break pretty quick, and we'll be back in just another minute. Welcome back. Let's talk a little bit about game cameras. I know everybody out there that hunts nowadays has to use and does use game cameras in their scouting, pre-scouting, pre-season. Some people run cameras all year long. I talked about game cameras, I don't know, a few months ago, briefly. I'm not an expert in game cameras, but I guess I'm an expert when it comes to the school of hard knocks because I've learned a lot about them through trial and error and spent quite a bit of hard-earned dollars over the years on game cameras. And as you know, game cameras evolved where the old 35 millimeter film, put the roll of film in the camera and you set it out, and every time it took a picture inside, it was like a Instamatic camera, and it rolled that 35 one frame forward. You went out there next and you pulled the roll of film out, and you hoped that when you opened the door, the film had rewound and wasn't exposed where you lost your whole roll. Then you had to take it to a film developing place and get your pictures developed and half the time the lighting was wrong or there was nothing there, and you paid for all these pictures and you got a few decent ones. Anyway, now we're to SD cards and high resolution, megapixel, and trigger speeds that are fast, so you don't get images. Anyway, we've come a long way, and they're still coming a long way. Nowadays, you can have a game camera where you put it on your tree, and you can be at home, and every time it takes a picture, it sends it to your phone, and you can look at what's standing in front of your food plot or your feeder real time. It's just amazing. They're wireless. You can sit there and watch it through the internet, and you say, well, he's there right now. I haven't gotten that far yet because those are pretty expensive, but as you can see, I've got, I don't know, I got some in the woods still, and I've got 4 here. They're all different brands. They all have their good points and their bad points. They all take pretty good pictures. The keys to me are the reliability, the warranty, and the quality of the daytime pictures. Don't be fooled by megapixel numbers. I did a lot of internet research. Megapixel numbers are kind of, they're sold as a selling point for the cameras, but they're not actually true like megapixels are. And there's an explanation there for it, but don't just buy one because it has high resolution or high megapixels. It depends on the camera. Trigger speed is really important. If you check your game cameras and you have nothing there, that means the animal walked by, trigger speed was slow. It took the picture and it took a picture of the woods because your animal had already walked past. So trigger speed is really important. If you want to catch those pictures when they're just walking down a trail or walking past in front of your feeder or your food plot. And all trigger speeds, they've gotten pretty good, but they vary. Most all of these cameras are made in China. Good, bad, or indifferent. It's not like any other product that we have in this country anymore is that. But there's one company in Canada, and there's only 1 or 2 companies here in the U.S. that actually make them here, and they're pretty pricey, the ones that are made in the USA. But they're more reliable, their warranty's better. The ones in China, they take good pictures, and for most of us, because of the affordability you can buy them and throw them away because there's no warranty. You can't send them anywhere to get them fixed, and there's no repair facilities for them. There's no repair parts for them. So when it comes to warranties and the shopping price, I wouldn't shop price. Between $100 and $150, you can get really good ones, even though they're made in China. And you can see some for $69 and $89. I would personally avoid those. I'm not encouraging, high end, but be careful when you purchase them. But trigger speed, resolution, all of them take good pictures mostly, except at nighttime. They're all pretty iffy at night. Batteries. Everybody complains they go through batteries. I switched to lithium batteries rather than alkaline batteries, which is what the companies recommend. If you can and can afford lithium, they last longer in cold weather, and they last longer than they're a little bit more expensive, but you'll replace them sooner than you will lithium if you continue to use the alkaline. So just a couple tips on game cameras. Don't point them east, don't point them west. Point them north or south if you can because of the sun, and you'll have better pictures that way. Lastly, I want to talk about, I recently became a member of the National Rifle Association, and if you're not a member, I encourage you. I became a life member because I've been a member for a long time, but now I feel it's more critical. There's an article in this November issue of American Rifleman, and it's written by the president of NRA, and it talks about our loss of hunting, our decline of hunting, and where our future of hunting is going with the effort that's out there. So if at all you can get involved in an organization that has to do with not only preserving habitat, but preserves our heritage and fights for our rights, I encourage you to do so. And there's a myriad out there, but we're going to have to go now. Have a good day.
Thanks for watching America's only daily outdoor TV show, Panhandle Outdoors with Winston Chester, featuring hunting, fishing, and other activities and information to help you enjoy the great outdoors. Join us next time for Panhandle Outdoors.